before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that St. Mary's University is located on the traditional land of the Mi'kmaq. I'd also like to acknowledge that SUNY Cortland, where I am currently located and teach at, was founded on the traditional land of the Haudenosaunee. It is my pleasure today to introduce Rhonda Taylor for her talk on challenges faced by women in hockey. Rhonda is uniquely positioned to speak on this topic as she was the chair organizer for the first Women's National Hockey Championship in 1982, was a founding member and the first director of the Female Council, and was the first woman to sit on the CAHA Board of Directors, which is now Hockey Canada. She has also published an autobiography titled Offside, a memoir, Challenges Faced by Women in Hockey, in which she discusses the place of women in Canada's hockey world in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Rhonda hopes her book will document this chapter of women's history and inspire girls to take up the battle against gender discrimination. Currently, Rhonda is the director of partnerships globally for a New Zealand HR software company. I'd like to note that this is a webinar format, so if you have questions, you can either put them in the chat or use the Q&A function, and I will help moderate that at the end. We're very excited to have Rhonda here with us, so please welcome Rhonda Taylor.
And I'm going to, at this time, also introduce a colleague of mine, Kristen Lipscomb. And Kristen is the vice president of Offside, Making Her Story, which is a movement that involved from my book. So Kristen's going to help me go through everything because there's a lot to cover in short times. So Chris, you're my quarterback. Go for it.
All right, I'll get you started, Rhonda. So I'm just going to share my screen now and get our presentation started. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay, so welcome to Offside Making Her Story, our very first panel presentation. Thank you for having us, the hockey conference at St. Mary's University in Halifax. It's a great pleasure for Rhonda and I to be here. That was a lovely introduction to Rhonda. My name is Kristen Lipscomb, so some of you may recognize my name. I was a longtime sports reporter with Metro Halifax, covering QMJHL, AUS, CIS, and a lot of women's sports. I am also a staff member alumna with Canada's National Women's Program, with 4 World Championship gold medals and 2 Olympic gold medals with the work that I did with Team Canada. So Rhonda and I are both from Kingston, Ontario. So, and her husband actually coached me growing up. So we made a connection, and after I found out about her book and I offered my services, and she reached out to me to see how I could help, and we've connected, and here we are today. So just a little bit more about Rhonda that you can see here. She was the chair organizer of the first Women's National Hockey Championship in 1982, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. She was a founding member and the first director of the Female Council for Hockey Canada.
Kristen, do you want to move the slide?
Can you not? This is the second slide. I'm just reading off the.
Okay.
Yeah. The Canadian Amateur Hockey Association, which is now Hockey Canada. And she also most recently authored her memoir, Challenges Faced by Women in Hockey, and it's Offside. Okay, so can you see the screen? What is Offside?
Yes.
Okay, so basically Offside is actually more than just a book now. It's become a movement for sports equity and equity really everywhere. So we've called it Offside, Making Her Story. It started off as Rhonda's self-published memoir, truly a passion project built by a wonderful women's hockey builder. And it was co-authored by her great niece, Denby Whitmarsh. The book tells Rhonda's personal story of facing and overcoming challenges and discriminations while playing and working in the female game from about the 1960s through the 1980s. So there's a good bunch of women's hockey history documented in this book. However, this book is actually much more than just a story about Rhonda's personal and professional life. It's actually become a launching pad for other women and girls in sport, and anyone in sport really, in any sport, to share their own story. Ultimately, I think somebody's, there we go. Anyway, it's for anyone to share their stories and ultimately inspire others to dream big, reach for their goals, whether that's on and off the ice. We all know the values that we gain from sports such as hockey. So wherever they're working, competing, both in sports and in life, it's about creating diversity and welcome and equality and equity. So the book has actually become a full new website, a blog, a podcast, a community, and what the Offside team calls a true sports equity movement. So as Rhonda says, I've told my story. Now it's time for you to tell yours. A few more quick facts about Rhonda, and then we're going to get into her book first, and then a little bit about the movement. So Rhonda played for an iconic Canadian women's hockey team, a historical Canadian women's hockey team called the Kingston Red Barons. She's also a proud alumna of the Queen's University, what was then called the Golden Gals. So now they're the Gales. They were the Golden Gales, now they're the Gales, but they were the Golden Gals back in the day when women's hockey was first getting started at the university level. She's a member of the Kingston and District Sports Hall of Fame. We've already mentioned that she's the first woman to sit on the board of on the board of directors for which is now Hockey Canada. And she also orchestrated the first ever National Women's Hockey Championship. She's actually overseen 3 of those National Women's Hockey Championships over her career, building major sponsorships. One of the first person to actually reach out and get sponsorship for female hockey at a competitive level. So that's a massive deal. So we see what's happening at the WHPA level now and the NWHL gaining sponsors. And we know it's still a challenge. It always has been a challenge. But Rhonda was really the first to reach out and get financial support for the female game. Many people may not know this, but she also ignited the movement to remove intentional body checking from the female game, which was quite the debate. I remember being a young female hockey player, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. I thought maybe we should have the same game as the boys. But of course, the women's game is a different game. It's competitive, highly skilled, and it's an intense competitive game in its own right. But she was the woman to lead that movement. As mentioned, she works full-time as a human resources consultant and a mentor. So she has her full-time job, and then she has her passion projects on the side, like many of us. And she's a full-time advocate for women's sports, for equity and diversity for all. So Rhonda, I'm going to pass it over to you now to talk a little bit about how the book actually came together, like why you decided you wanted to put pen to paper and share your story.
Thanks, Kirsten, and thanks for the introduction. You did such a thorough job, and it sets the groundwork for what I'm going to speak about, because the book was a long time evolving. I saved a lot of information through my time, and I just kept putting it in a box, and we would move, and my husband would say, "Do we keep this box?" And I'm like, "Yes, we keep this box," and we keep adding stuff to it. So then when it came time to write the book, I had to think, I have to apologize. Although I graduated from Queen's, I'm probably that generation, that's the illiterate Queen's grad. I am not a great writer. Software I'm great at, but forget the writing side. So I had a great niece who was a writer, and she and I sort of walked to the same beat. She's an elite athlete with McGill University. She played women's ice hockey. So one day I sat down with her, I showed her the book, showed her my box, and I said, I really would like to pull together a book. And I sat down a couple of times and tried to start it, and it just wasn't going in the direction that I wanted. And Denby says, "Auntie Rhonda, I would love to write the book." And so when we went through all the information, we sat down, and these were the chapters that we developed and focused on with the book. And believe me, now that I look back, I could write another book, because there was just so much that fell through the cracks that we never covered. So saying that, you want to go to the next screen for me, Chris, please? Saying that, we got the book, and believe it or not, the book was published. We wrote the book, Denby and I, probably in 5 months, which is an incredible timing. Then we started shopping it around to see publishers and everything. And we had a gentleman who wanted to be our agent. And he felt very comfortable in getting that he could get it published. And he would take a percentage of the book. And he said, oh, I did it for Anne Murray and I can do it for you. And we just decided to publish it ourselves, self-publish. And I'm glad we did, because while we were self-publishing, that gentleman passed away. So suddenly, so it was like Lady Luck was on my side. Woo! So we then, self-publishing, we then had to create promoting the book. And like women's hockey, again, it was another challenge, you know, because here I wrote a book on women's hockey. And the best side of it all was I just thought, I got to promote it. It's just the same as when I worked with the women's game. You just have to keep knocking on doors. You just have to keep the profile front and center. When we decided to do the launch, I took it back to an area that I was familiar with, but an area that I'm very proud of. I took it back to the International Ice Hockey Hall of Fame in Kingston, Ontario. And I ran my press conference and the launch of my book from that facility. It was great. It got lots of visibility from it. And I was there with, you know, standing beside Jenna Hefford's sweater, and you'll see later. It was just a great place for launching the book. And then we also have, you know, a part when I launched the book, the local media stepped up and they helped promote it. So I think we have a clip here, don't we, Chris?
We do. I'm going to have to, you're going to have to start just chat about it a little bit while I get it set up. I'm going to have to click the link, stop sharing, and then reshare, and we'll see how it works. So
while you're doing this, this is just one, but I ended up presenting like throughout Canada, the United States, CBC Radio Canada in Montreal. Denby, thank God, is French, so the pair of us did it together. So it was definitely a great experience for the pair of us. But again, we were reaching out to media about a book that was on the women's game. So you know, it was pretty positive, but I'm not sure. Chris, all we're doing is looking at you. There we go.
I got it right here. Don't worry, Rhonda.
Okay. So here's the clip.
Can you hear it okay?
Yep.
Wishing you a great Friday morning. Thanks for joining us. Always amazing to be in the presence of a trailblazer. I'm with one right now, Rhonda Taylor, the author of Offside, a memoir, challenges faced by women in hockey. When was the last time you skated, by the way? When was the last time you laced up, Rhonda?
I skate still fairly regularly. You know, just no equipment, no hockey, but I do skating because it's something I did all my life. It's part of me.
Well, you came up in a time where women playing hockey, not unheard of, but rare.
Hockey was considered a man's game. Philosophically, everybody was hooked to Hockey Night in Canada in the original six. Girls played hockey a little bit before the war. There was always little pockets of hockey, but still at the time that I started to play, it was still considered a man's game.
How far did you get?
You know, at my time, there was not a real structured program. We won what was called the North American Championships in Wallaceburg one year, but it wasn't really a structured championship. It was more a tournament. The teams came in from all over the country. And then I won at Queens. I won the OCAA championship when I played for Queens. And at that time, the women's program did not go to a national level, which it does today.
What was it about this area? We can talk about Queens at the turn of the century with women's hockey. We can talk about the Red Barons in the late 60s, early 70s. Women love their hockey in this region.
Kingston's a hockey town. You know, Kingston, you know, when we grew up, it was considered still a small town. And the hockey rinks were the hub of activity on weekends and evenings. and for many of us, early mornings.
Yeah. You talk about the Red Barons, you touch on the Red Barons in here.
Yeah.
They really did put women's hockey on the map a long time ago here in this region.
They definitely did. Like the Red Barons, you know, they were a group of women ahead of their time. And it was thanks to the two individuals that's, you know, spearheaded the program, Cookie Cartwright and Annabelle Twitty, because they were so passionate and it was just so infectious.
Is this story more about hockey? It's about challenges as well.
It's a story about hockey, and I correlate it to the women's movement and the challenges that the women's hockey program had in its development phases. And I'm basically coming out and saying to the youth of today that, you know, we had our challenges. We now pass the torch to you guys. You know, keep fighting the battle. I'm so proud of the Jenna Hefford spearing the women's pro program, and I'm rooting on the social media that the NHL step up and be the big brothers that they should be.
Since the release, attention has been focused on you and your book. Now a book signing is in the works in December.
That's right. December the 14th, I'll be at the Indigo store here in Kingston. And it's a great time to buy a Christmas gift for the little hockey players in your life.
Absolutely. Well, what did you learn putting this together? Maybe some memories that you hadn't thought of in a long time, things that you revisited?
It was co-authored with my great niece, Denby Wetmarsh. And I was telling Denby the story. I had this whole box of memorabilia, and I was telling Denby this. Denby going over what this happened here and this happened here, and Denby would say, "Auntie Rhonda, that's just not right." And
An example.
It could be you know, the going asking for ice time. You know, the city of Kingston was pretty good to us, but we always did have Friday nights at 9 o'clock. Those were our home games. So teams that had to come from Montreal, you know, Peterborough to play us, it was a pretty late night for them.
Good for you guys.
Yeah, exactly. And our practice times were really early. Like we practiced a lot at 6 a.m. You know, at the Harold Harvey and the Cooks Youth Center, and the Wally Elmer, and I'll tell you, those rinks were cold back then. You know, so that was just an example of, you know, the ice time allocation. And, excuse me, and we were just happy to get it. But when you looked at the big picture, you know, a lot of the programs were getting ice time on Saturday afternoons and Sunday afternoons, or Friday earlier for their home games. But you know, we just accepted it and moved on.
Congratulations on your life, and nice that you can document it in this book. And again, there is the book signing at Indigo.
Yeah.
In December. Great Christmas present for the young budding hockey star in your life.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Rhonda, I'm passing it over to you while I get our presentation back up.
Okay, and you know that what's really interesting about that was just an example of it, and it was quite interesting to see sometimes the naivety of some of the interviewers when I was speaking about my book. You know, the questions that were pretty generic, and often they didn't want to go into you know, like the hard stuff, you know, the gender discrimination. And you know what? We have to step up and say it existed back then. But let's talk about what we did to change things so that it was a more level playing field for the players. So as we said, we started getting the book promoted, and one of the players that came out and supported us from the very beginning, Kirsten, that's Taylor, isn't it? Oh, Taylor's you're muted, Chris. So that's Taylor Woods and she plays for the Toronto Six, and she also plays for the Dream Gap Tour, right?
No, she's a former Professional Women's Hockey Players Association player, so not part of the Dream Gap this year. She joined the National Women's Hockey League and plays with the Toronto Six, so the only Canadian team in that the other league. But she's also an alumna of the Canada's National Women's Program, so it's played at the national and international levels with Hockey Canada. So yes, we've had a lot of the players, current and former, from both professional leagues or organizations that exist, as well as from the national programs support us. So we've been fortunate for that.
Spooner, Sammy Joe, many of them, Digit have been there. So there's just a clip. Do we want to show this clip? How are we doing time wise? This is the launch of the Hockey Hall of Fame. And the reason I would like to see this clip is that Denby, my great niece, speaks, and she shares tremendous insight as to how the book played a role in a young person's life. So let's show this, Chris.
Okay, I'm gonna get it set up for us. So
while she's setting this up, this was again at the International Ice Hockey Hall of Fame, and I was just astounded at the turnout. We sent out invites to the media. We sent out invites. We had Dr. Julie Stevens came all the way from St. Catharines. We had Courtney from Dr. Courtney from Queen's University, and the really fun part about it was there that I got to poke, Pat Reed in the ribs through Dr. Stevens. And my question was, why pink? And we'll talk about that statement later.
I had buried, and I was doing the work, and the documentation occurred, but not at a strong level with Hockey Canada and with the OWHA. So literally by writing this book, I have been able to write the history of the women's hockey program. And Hockey Canada has been very supportive in saying we needed to know this about our early stages of the program. This book talks about where we have come from, and it tells everybody that a lot of work has occurred, and it hasn't occurred fast, and we have to stay focused in moving forward, and we have to be strategic and never give up. Just I'm passing the torch to others, and it's a long road, and the book is saying stay true to the women's hockey program. Women's hockey it's still in its infancy stages. There's just so much further for us to go, and I hope that this book inspires the girls to take it there.
Lehman, a Kingston and District Sports Hall of Famer, was an original member of the Kingston Red Barons when they were formed back in 1969. They are now celebrating their 50th anniversary. They were a trailblazing team for women's hockey.
You know what, that's the interesting part, is that we didn't even know it. Like, even when I was organizing the nationals, and whether it was the Red Barons, I didn't realize that I was doing something special because I just loved the game. What memories and what friendships. I have incredibly deep friendships with these individuals, and two ladies, Cookie Cartwright and Annabelle, were my mentors in life. I don't know if they're proud where I am today, but they really helped formulate.
I'm sure they are.
What was important for me to achieve, and I can't say enough good things about them.
The importance of this book is that it does two things. One is that it documents an important chapter of lost history. That is the creation of the modern Canadian women's hockey program and all the discrimination and challenges and the gender inequality that our foremothers had to go through in order to get this game up and running and socially acceptable for girls to play. And secondly, we use that as a base, and this is where the second importance comes in, because it it really helps to inspire the youth of the next generation to pick up the torch in the battle against gender discrimination and to keep pushing to gain full equality for women in the sport.
Whitmarsh says it was an honor and a privilege to work on the book with Rhonda Taylor Lehman, a former star with the Kingston Red Barons and the first woman to sit on the board with Hockey Canada.
That's my great aunt. So it's been a pleasure working with her this summer. I would not change it for the world. I've learned so much about women, about our history as athletes and everything that we had to go through. And it's been really eye-opening for me as a young girl to learn about exactly how bad it was for these women in that era. Aunt Rhonda had a great big box of memorabilia, of newsletters, of photographs, of journal entries, of meeting minutes even, and all kinds of wonderful old documents that I got to sift through and go through and really add a lot to this book in terms of historical relevance, because it's drawn literally from first primary source information in the form of Rhonda, but with a modern outlook, a modern contemporary feminist outlook on it. So that I think it caters a lot to the viewership, because both young and old readers are going to be able to get a lot out of the book. If Rhonda hadn't done what she did, I would never have been able to play just, every Saturday morning like the boys do. That would never have been a possibility for me, and I would have missed out on all those wonderful moments.
Okay, Rhonda, throwing it back to you while I transition.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Denby, as I said earlier, is at McGill University.
These is huge. Ryan Easton here.
And Denby stepped back. Yes, Angela James asked me if I remember. Angela, you were at the first Women's Nationals. And I did play against you. I was frightened of you, Angela. You were so fast. But it was a good time. Angela, I do remember being part of the women's program. And actually, I was looking at a video the other day of Angela James accepting a trophy in your early days, Angela. And I did speak to you once, just recently. You were refereeing a hockey game. I forget the arena, but it's great to reconnect with Angela in the chat. So saying that, Denby's been very active in school, and her love is track and field, cross country. And when the movement started, she stepped down, but she still is a big supporter, and she still writes for us, thank goodness. So if you take a look here, I'm going to talk about the Red Barons, and here's the team, and I'm up on the back line, and but you take a look, and you see the Snoopy characters. We evolved at the same time as Charles Schulz launched the Red Baron, and Cookie Cartwright, being a lawyer, wrote to Charles, said, "We're a fledgling hockey team. Could we use the logo of Snoopy?" And he turned around and he says, "Whatever my characters can do to help you women play the game, by all means, you have my blessing." So, and over on the left-hand side is a t-shirt that we sold. And happiness is never having to go into the corners as Woodstock plays in the bird bath. That was one of our most popular, t-shirts to sell. But the Red Barons, again, we were scrappy. We all provided our own equipment. We were lucky. We had an incredible gentleman, Bob Weatherden, to coach us through many years. And the Red Barons were an elite team. They actually, believe it or not, became one of the top teams in North America. And whenever anybody wanted to come to Canada out of the States, they would track down the Red Barons. And I speak about one of the games, one of these in the Mossport Jets in my book. They came from the United States. They were funded. They had matching tracksuits. They had matching hockey pants and hockey gear. And oh my goodness. And they rolled in on a bus. And it was just like, we just the Red Barons just sat there and like, oh my gosh, if only. And we got on the ice, and this team had appeared, and I forget, but I think they were like 93 games, never beaten, never lost a game. And it was very obvious that we were the better team. And as the game got going on, it actually got very physical, which we in Canada, not very often did our games get physical, but you got to remember the Mosport Jets came from an era of the US NHL hockey programs. And, the one thing they forgot to learn in their hockey program was they forgot to learn how to lose. And it was the first time I ever saw a fight break out in women's ice hockey. So that's one of the experiences that I can always remember. And as I said, when after playing for the Red Barons and having to, contribute to travel, pay for my own hotel accommodations, give money for entry fees into tournaments, all of a sudden I'm at Queen's University. The everything is paid for. We're treated like elite athletes. It's like the coin got flipped. And so what happened at that time in the women's hockey program is that the Queen's University team complemented the Red Barons. And we ended up being just a powerhouse. And unfortunately, the history books will never capture it because media didn't capture it at the time. But there was a player on the Red Barons that today I still, I think the world of some of our elite players. But Angela James, you played against Sue Wright. I'm sure you have to, she probably was one of the best players that the women's hockey program has ever seen. But unfortunately, the world will never know about Sue Wright because the stats weren't kept. There was no provincial organization to report to. The media never covered it, so we can't go back to press clippings. It's so sad that so much of the women's hockey history has been lost. And that's why it was so important for me to write this book, because it has to be documented somewhere. And you go into the Hockey Canada website, there is that big gap. They came on board with the Nationals, but there's a big gap of what happened before, So in my life, I went from the Red Barons to Queens, which was just an incredible opportunity, and then over here is the W, this was the Wallaceburg. The JCs ran a great Senior A hockey tournament in Wallaceburg, Ontario. But you know what? It was called the Lipstick Tournament. And that used to just grate us that we were going to the Lipstick Tournament. And you know what that brought back? That brought back the air of the 1930s in a league of their own. But like the Rivalettes, the Preston Rivalettes, there's been a stage play from it, Hilda Ramscombe. And you read all the Queens had the Love Me Littles, and they were, because they didn't fit the mold, they were supposed to be ladies. They just ended up, being lost in the hockey history. So as I evolved as a player, I started getting into the hockey world. I started working for Hockey Ontario, and one of my first assignment was creating the women's nationals. And you'll see the challenge that I had. But what you're looking here is the first time women's hockey ever was actually marketed at a sophisticated level. I think I was 28 years old at the time. I walked into Shoppers Drug Mart with nothing more than a bunch of press clippings and a passion on my sleeve saying, women's hockey has got a great future. Here's a chance for Shoppers Drug Mart to be part of it. And David Shelton, bless his soul, you know, came on board, and the three of us went through, it was a 3-year contract. We saw the evolution of the women's game through 3 Shoppers Drug Mart Women's Nationals. And on the left-hand side there, before the clip was, is you actually saw that one of my co-conspirators was King Clancy. And every year before the Nationals, King Clancy would reach out and say, Rhonda, you know, as soon as you heard the Nationals were occurring, is there anything I could do? And he always appeared at our press conferences announcing the Women's Nationals. He was a strong fan. And I actually believe his granddaughter is now playing for...
Laura Stacey's in the Team Canada program.
Yep.
Yes.
That is his great-granddaughter, right? So, saying that, this is a great screen to show you the benchmark of the women's hockey program. Now, realize I was working for the OWHA. I had been a volunteer with the OWHA, and then I competed for the job with Hockey Ontario. I was the second candidate selected. The first candidate was a man, but because it wasn't paying well, and because it wasn't, it was a contract and not long-term, he turned it down. So by hook or by crook, I got into the position. But look at the balance, was it, you know, just a little under $3,000. And here I am being asked to conduct a women's national event by an organization that this is their annual event, the annual budget in 1979. And in 1972, their budget wasn't much more. They're asking me to run an event. So over in the left here is it was kind of fun. We Shoppers Drug Mart created this great graphics, and I'm like, hey, you know what? Women's girls that we have a face mask. Like, we don't want to give the wrong image. So Shoppers Drug Mart, you know, to meet our needs, turned around and put the face mask down in the corner. But it's amazing that you know, how we even had to capitulate with the sponsor, you know, because they was almost at many times it was the tail wagging the dog. The other proud moment is on the right-hand side is the Abby Hoffman Cup. And I was just so proud that it actually, you know, was raised by the championship teams for several years. However, this cup no longer exists. And I'm really sad that it doesn't. Unfortunately, Abby Hoffman, when girls playing on boys sports, went to the Supreme Court of Canada, and Abby said that if any girl wants to play the game and she makes a boys team, she should have the opportunity to play as long as it fits into the criteria. And the OWHA was saying, and women's hockey was, if there's a girls team in the community, the girl has to play for the girls team. And Abby was saying, no, she can decide whether she wants to play with the girls team or she wants to play with the boys team.
And it's the Justine Blaney case, right?
It was the Justine Blaney case. Yeah. Exactly. Thank you, Chris. And Abby, at that time, the OWHA stepped up at the Supreme Court, fought it, lost it, and in time, the Abby Hoffman Cup no longer existed in the women's hockey program. Now, going back, you see, this is the second Women's Nationals, but I kind of wanted to show the registration here. You see, as soon as we started having the Women's Nationals come on board, and then next came the Worlds, and then came the Olympics, you know, the women's hockey program just escalated by incredible numbers. And you know, the Olympics, everybody often wonders, like, how did women's hockey get into the Olympics? And this is a side note that, you know, Murray Costello let me know, is that women's hockey was actually, the Olympic Commission was in trouble because there were not enough female athletes in the Winter Olympics. And they said, we need to make it an equal number. And the best way to do it was to bring on a women's team. While there was only 2 winter teams that they could select. One would be the ringette, and the other one would be women's ice hockey. While unfortunately ringette was still regionalized because it was a sport that came from the top down. It was a sport that was taught by the recreation departments. So it wasn't a grassroots movement like the women's hockey movement was. So women's hockey was selected, and that's the reason that women's hockey got escalated into the Olympic program so quickly. And I'm forever thankful for that opportunity. And I talked about, I'm talking fast. I got so much great information to share with you guys.
Yeah, I'm just mindful of time, Rhonda. So
yeah, okay. And these women were the real pioneers. They went from wearing long skirts. We have stories of a female goalie in 1911 having a mask because she chipped a tooth in a game. We have female goalies who weighted their skirts down so that the puck wouldn't go under their skirts. There's just so much incredible historical stories about the women's game. So I'm going to share this. This is kind of a cute clip in 1928 announcing the women's nationals. Is it ready to go, Chris?
Which year, Rhonda? Which year?
This would be 1982.
Okay. I think you said 28.
28. I did. Dyslexia. I speak. Yeah.
Okay. So do a little bit more introduction so I can get this set up.
And this is from a program, which is a women's program called Take 30 that was offered in the afternoon. And the really interesting, the host of it is Harry Brown. Now, Harry Brown is the father of Robin Brown, who works for CBC, but she also was a great hockey advocate herself. And she's the first one to talk hockey on CBC, when the opportunity comes. And we had just announced that we were going to run with the nationals. And by gosh, we were just getting the money. You have to remember, I signed the contract with Shoppers Drug Mart January the 26th. The women's nationals happened April the 2nd.
Okay.
So talk about pulling together a women's championships quickly. Are you ready, Chris?
I am ready. Just a second here. Unmute.
I guess at one time or another, we've all known a little girl who wanted to play hockey and couldn't find a team that would take her. Well, things are changing. Girls are forming their own teams. There are various provincial women's hockey associations, and this year there'll be a national championship.
And you have, I think, a special interest in this story your daughter plays.
Well, I thought you'd never ask. Yes, Robin's been a hockey player since she was about 8, and she's in her late teens now, and it's been very much part of our lives, her game.
And to find out more about hockey, Harry went to watch a girls' team play.
Although it was pretty hard to tell while they were playing, every member of this team is female. These days, they start playing as young as 4 years old, and all the joys of a team sport and good fun belong to the girls as well as the boys. Rhonda Lehman is the development coordinator for the Ontario Women's Hockey Association.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to have Tanya playing on the second shift because...
Rhonda, how long have girls been playing hockey?
Well, we have pictures going right back to 1893, and with the long flowing skirts, and the title is "Women Keep Their Feminine Approach in a Newfound Sport."
Did they literally wear the wide skirts?
Oh yes, the long skirts and the wide brim hats and everything.
Yeah. No goalie pads or anything like that?
No. They had to stay very much socially acceptable while being out there playing the game.
Have things changed much?
Oh, they sure have. We've gone from the transition of the bloomers that evolved in 1920, where they wore the knickers, to the regular hockey equipment with figure skates in the early 50s, to every girl wearing a pair of tacks or langs or whatever in the 1970s, to the Cooperall today.
How about equipment, Rhonda? Is special equipment for girls an issue?
It used to be in the past because the girls were always looking for a pelvic protector of some sort and resorting to the jockstrap. But as time went and the demand for girls' protective equipment evolved, along came the shoulder pad, chest protector apparatus, as well as a pelvic protector, which is called the Jill strap, the answer to the jock.
What attitudes do you find towards the game as it applies to girls?
it is changing, but it still has to change quite a bit further. We have adults involved at the coaching level. We used to always attract the coach who really couldn't make it coaching a boys team, a guy who maybe thought it would be fun to flirt with the girls. And now we are coming upon really dedicated people who really want to help girls, develop in their skills. Refereeing the same way. We're now getting guys who are not out there just looking for the quick $15 a game. They're out there looking and really taking the game serious, because the girls take it serious.
And the parents, what do they like? Do they like the little girls to play hockey?
They have to come a little ways in the sense of the attitude. Girls hockey right now is very fortunate in the sense that we don't have an NHL, and there's not that bucket of gold at the end of the rainbow. But we still have the attitude that get out there and score a goal, and it's not get out there and have fun.
So you get the screamers at the girls' games the way you do at the boys' games.
Yeah, and the fathers yell just as loud as the mothers.
Do the kids respond differently? Because boys take that parental approach to hockey very seriously. Do the girls sort of look up and say, "Oh, Dad is crazy, he's up there yelling this and that"?
I think the girls display a little more character out there on the ice. I don't think that you've ever seen a male hockey player out there dancing where a girl will, she'll just show a little bit of character. And I believe that they really don't take the game as serious. There's no tears that I've ever seen.
Girls hockey seems to lack the viciousness, which to me is a great relief. What about the future, Rhonda, for girls? Is there going to be a national champion of girls hockey, say at various age levels? How old are the kids playing the game now?
Well, the future belongs in the little girls who are playing today, and many larger organizations are registering them at 4 and 5, and they're doing an excellent job because they're doing a skills development program, which is great because that's what should go on. The skill should be learned before the game is played. That's our future, and there's more girls getting involved each and every day, so it's obviously not a fad. The older girls, we're helping improve the competition. And yes, the national championships are just around the corner, and I'm very happy to say.
I'm excited at the prospect because this will give the kids a chance from all over the country to see how they're all doing, won't it?
That's right. And I think it will also make it very apparent that if a girl wants to play hockey, that she should have the opportunity to play it.
Hear to that one, Rhonda. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Rhonda, back to you.
Okay, thank you. And that was the almost like the announcement of the women's hockey program, of the women's nationals. And there was like, oh my God, I can just remember so many challenges with it. I remember David Shelton put that in the contract that it would be on a national TV, that the game would be televised in some on national TV. And I'm like, oh my God, can I promise this? And I phoned Abby and I said, Abby, this is one of the stipulations of the sponsors. And Abby says, Rhonda, you know what? Sign it. We'll somehow get CBC to do a clip. And sure enough, CBC Sports Weekend came in and covered part of the championship game. And we met the agreements to the contract. But right down to putting the logo in center ice. So there was just so many new things that never, I had never witnessed. But the women's nationals actually ended up coming in on budget, and just I was in a situation where, as the women's nationals evolved, I ended up with the OWHA on one side of me saying, good, make it happen, and I had my employer, Hockey Ontario, saying, Rhonda, just make sure that this isn't going to cost us any money. And the OWHA didn't have any money. And I was dealing with a budget that was way beyond, the OWHA's groundwork. So at the end of the day, as I said, I brought it in on budget, but it became very obvious to me. And as I look back now, I would have been the scapegoat if it hadn't have come in on budget. And to be honest, there was times with the women's nationals, I had it all on my credit card. And I was dedicated, and there was no way I knew business well enough from my home life that there was no way that I was going to let it. I had a budget and I stuck to it.
You're very passionate about the female game, Rhonda, and we have just only a few more minutes to get to the future of Offside. So I'm going to take over from here, and you can throw in some comments as we move through the rest of the slides. How about that? Okay.
Fine with me. All
right. So Offside. Sorry, I'm at work, and that's a overhead announcement. So Offside does donate to organizations supporting girls hockey, such as the Grindstone Award Foundation, which helps young girls who have a desire to play the game but don't have the financial means. So a portion of each sale of each book actually goes towards the Grindstone Foundation, and that's just part of the paying it forward that we want to do as a team. So you can visit grindstoneaward.com for more information on how you can help. You can also purchase the book online at Amazon and wherever you can buy books and contribute in that way. Okay, so
and also the other thing is that we have a swag part on our website. That's right. Okay, great.
So I just want to talk about the podcast really quick. We'll only have about 5 minutes, Rhonda. So we've started a podcast on our website, offsidemakinghistory.com. And we have a podcast. It's primarily audio. We're making it a visual and audio experience moving forward. But it has some great names in the sport from Team Canada alumna such as Sammy Jo Small. We've had Natalie Spooner and Brianne Jenner talk about some of the challenges in the sport and some of what they're looking forward to in the sport. We've had one of the challenges that they spoke about was the pandemic in the women's worlds, and the first cancellation, and how they're training and trying to stay positive throughout the pandemic. We know not that the women's worlds are in Calgary. We've had players such as Sarah Nurse and Soroy Tinker, who's also a professional player, come in on the podcast and talk about racism in hockey. That's been a hot button topic, as we know. We're stepping beyond gender as well. So we're talking to para hockey players about the challenges they face with various disabilities in accessing sport overall and in competing at a high level. We're talking to Canadian blind hockey, and we have a lot more planned. And I know, Rhonda, one of your favorite parts of the podcast so far has been the Builders series, being a builder yourself. But we've had some pretty big names coming from Hockey Canada's history, like Murray Costello and Pat Reed.
And I just want to say that between the Builders series and my book, nowhere else is there such a comprehensive history of the women's hockey program in Canada.
Yeah, so there's a lot of historical information. There's a lot of looking towards the future and what players are doing, and a lot of talk about the PWHAPA, the NWHL, what's happening with the NHL, looking back at the CWHL, a lot of topics going on. And again, the goal is to create diversity and equity truly in sport and beyond. And all of these lessons that we learn from women's hockey can be taken to any industry in the world in terms of how we can improve overall in terms of accepting people and providing equity and opportunities. So topics we'll have coming up next are, again, the future of the game, what's next, preparing for the Olympic Winter Games, what not competing internationally for 2.5 years has meant with multiple cancellations on the women's side, under 18 and senior levels.
But yet there's the World Championship for men going on in Latvia right now.
Yeah,
sorry, I won't get into that.
Yeah. We also have a written blog as well with professional writers, myself included, Denby, some other well-known hockey writers such as Rob Dolmendo, Mark Staffieri, who's written a lot for Women's Hockey Life, and others who are just really interested in sharing their stories. Anyone really who wants to have a voice and a platform, we want to give it to them. We had our first virtual event on International Women's Day. It was a gathering of various folks from the media world, the professional women's hockey world, volunteers, and we talked about the future of the game. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to show the clip. It will be.
So you must have.
Well, it is available on our website, but we don't have time to really do that. I know we're running short, so That clip should be available on our website. It's still under construction somewhat, but our new website is, again, offsidemakingherstory.com. You can follow us on social media at Offside Making Herstory, Instagram at Offside Making Herstory, Twitter, Offside Herstory, LinkedIn, Offside Herstory. And just this week, we opened up, our latest project is actually a swag shop. So here you can see an example of a hoodie, and we have various kind of athletic gear that you can buy, as well as notebooks. And some of those proceeds will also go to the Brian Stoddard Award Foundations and other causes that help promote equity in sports. So that's kind of where our movement is headed.
Yeah, go ahead, if I just have 30 seconds here. I want to talk about the logo, and I love the Offside logo. It was created specifically, we commissioned it. You can take a look and you can see the Offside is cursive, representing the feminine side of the women's game. The line represents the rules, represents the ice, represents the ceiling, and the F are the women that are breaking through the norms that are being established against them.
And so, moving forward. And
moving forward. And that's it. The cursive is slightly slanted. It's moving forward. There's so much about the Offside that says something about, you know, the future of women's sports, especially women's ice hockey, because, you know, hockey's in my DNA.
Oh yes, I think it's many people who are online now. I think it's in all of our DNA. So thank you from Team Offside on behalf of Rhonda and I for having us at the hockey conference. I know it's the 10th anniversary. I'm a Nova Scotian and Kingstonian. I lived in Nova Scotia for 12 years. I still own a house there. Very passionate about the place, and very sad to see Women's World not being hosted in Nova Scotia, although it makes sense to be in Calgary where the girls are centralized currently. But yeah, thank you, St. Mary's University. Thank you, Cheryl. It's been a real pleasure for us. And again, the point in Offside is to give voices and platforms to all voices, regardless of gender identity, ability, ethnicity, and so forth. It's about sharing stories and making positive difference in the lives of others. As Rhonda says, I've told my story. Now it's time for you to tell yours. Rhonda, I give you the final word.
You know, Chris, I want to say thanks to Chris for taking care of all the technology behind here, because I'm a little, I couldn't have done it without you, Chris. And you know, I was really touched. I loved how Aaron started this off, and I was not aware that St. Mary's and was built on native property, and I my heart goes out to Offside. Actually, Grindstone, you know, is very active with Indigenous women who want to play the game. So my heart goes out to everybody, you know, at this time in our country. Thanks all.
Thank you, Rhonda and Kristen, for your wonderful presentation. I think, unfortunately, we are completely out of time. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Rhonda. And to all of you attendees, I hope to see you more throughout the rest of the conference over the next 2 days. I hope you all have a good evening.